What is your command, Megatron?
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. For today's video, we're going to be checking out the Transformers 40th Anniversary Comic Edition Shockwave, which is based on what may just be one of the most iconic comic covers in the history of Transformers. And this is a really awesome looking Shockwave. As we directly compare him against his original G1 character model, the design is so insanely spot on. So as we check out the details, the head sculpt I think is banging. The amount of cybernetics that they were able to integrate into the design surrounding the Cyclopsian eye is looking sick. The only downside to this release for myself would be that in comparison to the original version, unfortunately he is now lacking the iconic light piping, but I don't think there is any denying in saying that the cell shading which is slapped across that chest unit is looking awesome. And because he was originally a Transformers Siege figure, he has also been detailed top to bottom, which I think looks brilliant. He was also easily one of the smallest leader class figures to be released from that War for Cybertron trilogy, so with the exception of two tiny hollow voids on the inside of the thigh, he has been sculpted and detailed front, side, and even here to the back, which I think again looks so well done. This may just be one of the only characters in the history of Transformers where having a pretty big ass backpack is totally accurate to the original source material. This again appears to be near spot on to how this guy did appear in the original G1 cartoon. So in all, it is just a solid Shockwave, to the point where I am left questioning as to whether or not in the future we ever need a Studio Series 86 update of easily one of the most iconic Decepticon characters in existence. When it comes down to accessories, even these I think are a huge improvement in comparison to the original leader class, because gone is the rather cool but definitely useless shock drone, which was clearly included first time round just to inflate Shockwave to that leader class price point. Instead, we have a decapitated Optimus Prime head complete with the actual life support system, which just by itself has been brilliantly detailed, even as we spin this here upside down, immaculately sculpted, and it is also totally blast effect compatible. So for whatever reason, if you wanted Optimus Prime's floating head to be ramming its way through the battlefield, then that is most definitely a look that you can pull off. But I really liked the integration of this cord that does plug into the back of Optimus Prime's head to recreate where Shockwave was trying to farm the creation matrix. But even this is way more than meets the eye, because in addition to being able to remove this from the actual base, you can then spin around here to the back, take the spinal cord and remove this from the back of Optimus Prime's head. You can then bring in the myth, the legend that is the Earthrise Optimus Prime, and this head is simply held on via a ball joint. So if we pop this bad boy clean off, bang! It gives the Earthrise Optimus Prime a whole new lease of life. And one thing which I thought was really awesome about this design is that it completely integrates into this guy's design. So when it does come down to transformation, you will have no issues at all in concealing this within the actual chest unit. Now I guess this could also be compatible with the Studio Series 86 Optimus Prime, although considering there is a pretty big difference when it comes to scale between the Earthrise Prime, unfortunately it is going to look a little out of place. Now, checking out Shockwave's posability, seeing as he was originally released as a Transformers Siege figure, he is packing near enough all of the same points of articulation as you would expect from a Transformers Studio Series as well as a Legacy release. So to begin with, the head can look up as well as can look down, but I definitely think that big ass chest piece is easily one of this guy's biggest weaknesses, because if the Autobots are looking to evade Shockwave, then they simply have to hide beneath. The head can then tilt both side to side as well as can also spin all the way around. The shoulder, despite packing the arm cannon, can also kick forwards as well as can kick backwards. It can then also kick out to the side, spin around here at the bicep, bend at the elbow, and despite this being the arm cannon, this can also rotate, and the same can also be said for the actual fisted hand. The waist can then spin all the way around. Megatron, I cannot detect the Autobots! And the hips are surprisingly packing indented ratchet joints. So in addition to kicking forwards that far, they can then also kick backwards. That is something which we don't even tend to see on a a modern day commander class. The hips can then kick also out to the side, spin around here at the thigh, the knees can bend pretty much there to 90, and then finally when it does come down here to the ankles, these are kind of limited. I mean, they will tilt side to side ever so slightly, but I definitely wish that was a little deeper. But as I'm sure you guys all know by now, to see what logical poses Shockwave is truly capable of, now let's put him through the pose test. So, checking out a few robot mode size comparisons, we are first of all bringing out the original Transformers Siege and Leader Class Shockwave. Now, both of these right here are incredibly solid, but when it comes down to which is the better deal between the two, personally guys, I'm going to go with the Comic Edition Shockwave. This guy now retails for roughly $40 in comparison to what this did at the time, which I believe was roughly $50. So if you did miss out on this guy originally, then I do think the brand new version is an absolute no-brainer, because when it does come down to a G1 style Shockwave, this right now is a near mainline masterpiece. The only part of the design from this one, which I would have loved to have seen integrated into this one, would have been the light piping. Personally, I don't think it would have contrasted at all against the comic book styling. For a comparison between the old and the new, here we have the Bumblebee movie Shockwave, which was such a brilliant translation from G1 into live action. I am really hoping that most of those Decepticon designs in particular don't go to waste and that we can see them reused for a future movie, because this right here is live action movie perfection. Here he is stacked up alongside the Studio Series 86 Deluxe Class Bumblebee, and get what I mean in regards to these guys hiding underneath Shockwave's chest unit. This guy wouldn't stand a chance in detecting the Autobots. Cracking his way out of retirement, we have the newly upgraded Transformers Earthrise Optimus Prime, and I've always thought that when it comes down to scale, these two here look banging, which is unfortunately something that now cannot be said as we bring out the brand new Studio Series 86 Optimus Prime. So maybe the main reason as to why they decide to increase him in size is so that they now have an excuse to go back and revisit characters such as Shockwave to also give those Studio Series 86 updates. And if that is the case, to kind of go back to my earlier point, it will definitely be really interesting to compare the improvements, because this right here, personally guys, I think is pretty much perfection. Now, turning to the transformation of Shockwave, would you guys believe me if I said that despite him having a killer robot mode, this is actually incredibly straightforward? So, for the first step, take both the head and the chest unit and pull this forwards. Personally, I've always been a huge fan of the amount of added surface detail that is crammed inside this guy's chest unit. You are then going to take the head, slide this back, and then take the entire chest unit and connect this back into its original position. We can then spin around here to the back of Shockwave, where we are now going to take a hold of the hose and detach it away from the fusion cannon. You are then going to spin around here to the backpack, where we are firstly going to take a hold of this joint and hinge this here upwards. We are then secondly going to take a hold of the remainder of the backpack and hinge this here upwards. You must then make sure that you are then making use out of this additional hinge joint, so also make sure to completely straighten that out. Then for the next step, we can spin around here to the back of Shockwave, which yet again reveals some additional hidden details. It is now where you are going to take the shoulders, and these are going to hinge all the way up exactly like that. Again guys, make sure to do the same for the second side. So hinge the arm cannon here upwards. What you are then going to do is take the front ends of the spacecraft, and this should then very nicely house over the top of the arm cannon. This section is then going to come up and over the top and should very nicely snap there into place. We can then spin around here to the underside of Shockwave, where you must then make sure to pinch the shoulders directly down the middle. We are then going to spin down here to the legs of Shockwave. So spin around here at the thigh on both sides. Then for the next step, you must make sure that Shockwave then does the splits, because we are now going to take this additional panel and detach it from some of the internal transformation joints. With that now all said and done, the knee and the thigh is very nicely going to slide inside this cavity. So making use out of this double hinge joint, just begin to compress all of this within. Again guys, make sure to do the same for the second side. So split the leg here outwards, take a hold of this panel and pop this here upwards, then you must make use out of this additional double hinge joint and compress both the knee and the thigh inside this guy's shin. We are going to proceed to directly combine all of this down the middle. Then for the next step, we are going to take a hold of the command deck, and this too will also combine, creating a pretty mighty tab, which is then going to slide into that slot. So make sure that that too does connect into the torso. We are then going to spin here to the side, where we are now going to take a hold of the antennas of Shockwave and make sure that these are also deployed on both sides. We are then going to take Shockwave's hose and snap it into this giant port, and then for one final touch, we are then going to spin Shockwave here to the underside, where the stabilizer of the spacecraft is. Now, to be honest, this can be an absolute nail breaker, so personally guys, I would most definitely recommend to bring in the use of an additional accessory, until eventually Shockwave's alt mode should be looking exactly like this. And bang! Here we have Shockwave, now fully transformed into what Hasbro officially referred to as the Cybertronian spacecraft. Now let's say that we do buy into that idea. When it does come down to detail, this has been incredibly sculpted. I've always been a huge fan of how the actual command deck resembles the head sculpt of Shockwave's robot mode. Even as we spin him around here to the back, he's still blast effect compatible, so should have no issues in turbo boosting through that battlefield. But there is also one final hidden mode inside this guy, and that would be if you do take a hold of these antennas and compress these down, flip Shockwave upside down, bang! We have recreated Shockwave's original G1 laser gun, so he should now have no issues in annihilating those Autobots on the Cybertronian battlefield. And if Hasbro and Takara were able to engineer something like this into this Shockwave, and even the more recent Bumblebee movie Megatron, then it definitely does give me hope for the upcoming 86 movie Megatron. This looks to be near spot on to how we do see Shockwave's alt mode in the original G1 cartoon, and if you do plan in not only transforming this guy but displaying him in this mode, then it most definitely has to be in this configuration. For some jet mode size comparisons, we are yet again bringing out the Transformers Siege Shockwave. Now both of these look great, but to kind of go back to my earlier point, I think this could have looked even better had yet again they integrated the light piping into the command deck. But as we spin both of these here to the side, in terms of which one does reign supreme, personally guys, I think it's going to come down to exactly that, personal preference. Do you guys prefer the look of the comic edition Shockwave or the Transformers Siege Shockwave? And I guess the same can be said as we bring out the Bumblebee movie Shockwave. Between the two alt modes, which is the one you guys prefer? A Cybertronian laser gun / spacecraft, or a full-blown Cybertronian tank? Here we have him compared against the tiny Studio Series 86 Bumblebee, the cranky Earthrise Optimus Prime, and then finally the Studio Series 86 Commander Class Optimus Prime. So, wrapping up on this review for the Transformers 40th Anniversary Comic Edition Shockwave. Personally, I think this is a banging second opportunity and a more affordable way in getting this mold into your collection. The robot mode as it stands, I think is without any doubt at all the best mainline Shockwave that has ever been made, and to see it this time reissued without the shock drone does make it slightly more affordable. When it does come down to the brand new accessory that in the form of the decapitated Optimus Prime head, I think it is a wicked inclusion. And I also really like how it is compatible with the Earthrise Optimus Prime. It really does give that figure a whole new lease of life, especially as fairly recently it was dethroned by the 86 movie version. The Cybertronian spacecraft is exactly what it says on the tin, but let's all face it, the second that we do transform that, we are totally flipping that baby upside down to recreate Shockwave's more iconic G1 laser gun, and personally I think it does a pretty decent job in matching yet again what we did see in the original cartoon. So for those of you who did miss out on the original Siege version, then I do think this is an absolute no-brainer. But for those who do already own that release, unless you are an absolute huge fan of this brand new comic styling, then I do think that maybe you can give this one a miss. I would love to get your guys' thoughts on this comic edition Shockwave down in the comment section below. What do you guys think? I want to thank you all so much for watching, and until my next video, transform and roll out!